2006, at 18 years old, you fled New York and traveled to the Amazon. This started a journey that I think lasts to this day. Tell me about this first leap. What in your heart pulled you towards the Amazon jungle?
From the time I was, 3 years old, I'd say, it was dinosaurs, wildlife documentaries, Steve Irwin, you name it. And like when my parents said, nature versus nurture, they nurtured my nature. I was always just drawn to streams, forests. I wanted to go explore where the little creek led. I wanted to see the turtles and the snakes. And so I was a kid that hated school, did not get along with school. I was dyslexic and didn't know it, undiagnosed. I didn't read until I was like 10 years old, like way behind. And so for me, the forest was safety. Like I remember one time in first grade, they had you doing those multiplication sheets. That was pure hell for me. And so I actually got so upset that I couldn't do it that I ran out the classroom, ran out the door and went to the nearest woods. And I stayed there because that was safe. And so for me, like once I got to the point where I was like, high school isn't working out, I had incredibly supportive parents that were like, look, just get out, take your GED, get out of high school after 10th grade. You got to go to college, but like start doing something you love. And so I saved up and bought a ticket to the Amazon and met some indigenous guys. And the second I walked in that forest, it's like the first scene in Jurassic Park when they see the dinosaurs and they go, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
I walked in there and I looked at those giant trees. I saw leafcutter ants in real life and I just went, oh, it was like the movie just started. That was when like I came online.
Can you put into words, what is it about that place that felt like home? What was it that drew you? What aspect of nature, the streams, the water, the forest, the jungle, the animals, what drew you?
It's always been in my blood. I mean, for any forest, I mean, whether it's, upstate New York or India or Borneo, but the Amazon, it's all of that turned up to this level where everything is superlatively diverse. You have more plants and animals than anywhere else on Earth, not just now, but in the entire fossil record. It's the Andes Amazon interface. That's terrestrially, that's where it is. That's the greatest library of life that has ever existed. And so you're so stimulated. You're so overwhelmed with color and diversity and beauty and this overwhelming sense of natural majesty of these, 1,000-year-old trees, and half the life is up in the canopy of those trees. We don't even have access to it. There's stuff without names walking around on those branches. And it's like, it just takes you somewhere. And so going there, it was like, the guys I met just opened the door and they were like, how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole? How much of this do you want to see?
You mentioned Steve Irwin. You list a bunch of heroes that you have. He's one of them. And you said that when you're unsure about a decision, you ask yourself, WWSD, what would Steve do? Why is that such a good heuristic for life? What would Steve do?
He's a human being that, like, everything we saw from Steve Irwin was positive. Everything was with a smile on his face. If he was getting bitten by a reticulated python, he was smiling. Yeah. If he was, getting destroyed in the news for feeding a crocodile with his son too close, he was trying to explain to people why it's okay and why we have to love these animals. And everything was about love. Everything was about, wildlife and protecting. And to me, a person like that where you only see positive things, that's a role model.
And it's just like an endless curiosity and hunger to explore this world of nature.
Yeah, and an insatiable madness for wildlife. I mean, the guy was just so much fun.
I gotta, if it's okay, read to you a few of your own words. You opened the book Mother of God with a passage that I think beautifully paints a scene. Before he died, Santiago Duran told me a secret. It was late at night in a palm-thatched hut on the bank of the Tambopata River, deep in the southwestern corner of the Amazon basin. Besides a mud oven, 2 wild boar heads sizzled in a cradle of embers, their protruding tusks curling in static agony as they cooked. The smell of burning cecropia wood and singed flesh filled the air. Woven basket containing monkey skulls hung from the rafters, where stars peeked through the gaps in the thatching. A pair of chickens huddled in the corner, conversing softly. We sat facing each other on sturdy benches, across a table hewn from a single cross-section of some massive tree, now nearly consumed by termites. The song of 1,000,000 insects and frogs filled the night. Santiago's cigarette trembled in the aged fingers as he leaned close over the candlelight to describe a place hidden in the jungle. That line, the songs of a million insects and frogs filled the night, for some reason hit me. Um, what's it like sitting there conversing among so many living creatures all around you?
Every night in the jungle, you live in constant awareness of that. Out there in the darkness are literally millions of heartbeats around you. And so like we exist in this, domesticated paved world most of the time. But when you go out there past the roads and the telephone poles and the hospitals, and you make it out into earth, just wild earth. And it's not like this is a national park. There's no rescue helicopter waiting to come get you. You are out there and you're surrounded at night by, there are snakes and jaguars and frogs and insects and all this stuff just crawling through the swamps and through the trees and through the branches. And we put on headlamps and go out into the night and just absolutely fall to our knees with wonder of the things that we see. It's absolutely incredible.
And most of it doesn't make sounds like the insects do.
The insects do, the frogs do. You have some of the night birds making sounds, but a lot of it, everything has evolved to be silent, invisible. Everything there is on the list. There's another line in Mother of God where I said, life is just like a temporary moment of stasis and like the churning, recycling death march that is the Amazon. It's been called the greatest natural battlefield on Earth. If in any square acre, there's more stuff eating other things than anywhere else. And you go through a swamp in the Amazon, and there's tarantulas floating on the water. There's frogs in the trees. There's tadpoles hanging from leaves, waiting to drop into the water. There's fish waiting to eat them. There's birds in the trees. You literally are surrounded by so many things that your brain can't process it. It's just overwhelming life.
Churning death march. Some of the creatures are waiting, and some of them are being a bit more proactive about it. What do you make of that churning death march? The amount of murder that's happening all around you at all scales. What is that? We dramatize wars and the millions of people that were lost in World War II. Some of them tortured, some of them dying with a gun in hand, some of them civilians. But it's just millions of people. What about the billions and billions and billions of organisms that are just being murdered all around you? Does that change your view of nature, of life here?
I've always kind of wondered like that. Like when you see like a wildebeest taken down by lions and eaten from behind while it's alive, and it makes you question God. You go, how could they let this happen? In the Amazon, I find personally that these natural processes make up almost a religion. That it reminds you how temporary we are. That the bot flies that are trying to get into your skin, and the mosquitoes that are trying to suck your blood, and when you sweat, you literally can like hold out your arm and watch the condensation come off of your skin and rise up into the canopy and join the clouds and rain back down in the afternoon, and then you drink the river and start it all over again, and it's like it's flowing through you. So the Amazon reminds me that there's a lot that we don't understand. And so when it comes to that overwhelming and collective murder, as Werner Herzog put it, it's just part of the show. It's part of the freak show of the Amazonian night.
So you in certain moments able to feel one with a mosquito that's trying to kill you slowly?
One with the mosquito is a stretch.
Is it always the enemy? What I mean is like you're part of the machine there, right?
Yeah, and it's like fair play. It's like fair play. So like we have bullet ants, and like you get nailed by a bullet ant, and you just go,
yeah, well done. Well done.
Today's over. I'm going back to bed, and I'm taking a pile of Tylenol, and
Do you think in that sense, when you're out there, are you a part of nature or are you separate from nature? Is man a part of nature or separate?
I think that's what's so refreshing about it, is that out there you truly are. And so whether we're bringing researchers or film crews or whether we're just out there ourselves on an expedition, you truly are part of nature. And so one of the things that my team and I started doing when I became friends with these guys, this is a family of Indigenous people from the community of Infierno, and they took me in, and as we got close, they started saying, you can come with us on our like annual hunting trip. And I went, okay. And it's 4 guys in a boat, and you don't want to get your clothes wet. So we're all in like our boxers in a canoe with a motor going out past the places that have names, and you're out in the middle of the jungle. And the thing is, like, when your motor breaks, you are so quickly reminded of the inherent truths, like the things that nobody can argue with. And we live in such a human world where everything is debatable, religion and politics and perspectives on everything. And then you get down to this point where it's like, if we don't figure something out, the river is going to rise and take the boat. That's the truth. And ain't nobody going to like argue with that. And it's like, to me, there's a beauty in that truth, because then all of us are united there in that truth against like the natural facts around us. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's a state where I feel very, very at home.
And the Amazon is more efficient than most places on Earth at swallowing you up.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay. So just to linger on that, because you've spoken about Francisco de Orellana, who's this explorer in 1541 and 42 that sailed the length of the Amazon.
Yeah.
Probably one of the first. And there's just a few things I should probably read. I should probably find a good book on him, because the guy seems like a gangster.
Yes, there's some great books on him.
So he sailed, he led the expedition that sailed all the way from one end to the other. Yeah. There's like a rebuilding of a ship.
Which is insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because it speaks to the thing, it's like nobody's going to come and rescue you.
No.
You have to, if your boat dies, you got to have to rebuild it.
Yeah. So they came down the Andes, entered in the headwaters of the Amazon, constructed some sort of raft, boat, craft, something, and made it down the entire Amazon basin. Of course, his stories are the ones that led to the Amazon being called the Amazon, because he reported tribes of women. He reported these large cities, places where the tribes lived on farms of river turtles that they corralled, and they lived off of that protein. And then when they came out to the mouth of the Amazon, if I remember it correctly, that just through navigation and the stars, they were able to calculate where the way was back to Spain and make a boat seaworthy enough to bring them home. Incredible. Absolutely.
Do people like that inspire you, your own journey? Like, what gives you kind of strength that in these harshest of times, in harshest of conditions, you can persevere?
Yeah. I mean, you look at the stories of people that are so, these stories of people that have overcome incredible suffering like that, or like, what Shackleton did or something like that. And so like when you're, I've been, your tent gets washed away. You go to sleep and the river rises 20 feet and washes away your tent, and you crawl out and all you have is a machete and a headlamp, literally no bag, no food, no nothing. And you go, wow, the next 6 days before I reach back to a town is going to be just pure hell. I'm going to be sleeping on the ground, covered in ants, destroyed by mosquitoes. And then it becomes, am I in any capacity, any percentage as tough and resilient as the people that I've read about that have made it through things far worse than this? And then that's the game you play.
What goes through your head when all you got is the headlamp and the machete? So are you thinking at all? Like I've gotten a chance to interact quite a lot with Elon Musk, and he constantly puts out fires, having to run several companies. There's never a kind of whiny deliberation about issues. You're just always one step forward, how to solve, right? This is the situation, how do you solve it? Or do you also have a kind of self-motivating, almost egotistical, like, I'm a bad motherfucker, I can handle anything, almost like trying to fake it till you make it kind of thing?
There was a little bit of
your
that.
machete in the
I got a sword. There may have been a little bit of that when I was like, like 14, 15 years old. I'd like, have like a hunting knife and my dog, and I'd go out into the woods of like the Catskills and survive for a weekend. With my rule was one match. You get one match, and you got to make shelter. And then, I'd bring like a steak and like make a fire and stuff. And like at that point, there maybe was some ego, but in the Amazon, you get stripped down so completely that it's like that thing, like, watch the atheism leave everyone's body when they think they're about to die. It's like when you find yourself staring up at the Amazon at night and you go, there is no hope of getting out of here. I mean, I was once lost in a swamp where it took me days to get out of there. And there was moments where I just said, this is, this is clearly it. There's no ego there. There's just hope. You start realizing what you believe in and praying that you'll be okay, and then trying to summon whatever you know about how to survive, and that's it. And so it's actually, again, it's kind of a blissful state if you can walk that line between like adventure and tragedy and sort of keep yourself right at that very, very fine line without going over.
Ever fear of death? Fear? Ever fear? Terror?
No, I don't want to die. I wanna, I love the people in my life, and there's a lot of things I want to do. But every time I've been certain that I'm going to die, I've been very, very calm, and just sort of like, okay, well, if this is how the movie goes, then this is how it goes.
Almost accepting.
Yeah, which is reassuring.
You mentioned Herzog. Just to venture down this road of death and fear and so on, there's been a few madmen like you in this world. He's documented a couple of them. What lessons do you draw from Grizzly Man or Into the Wild? Those kinds of stories. Were you ever afraid that you would be one of those stories?
Oh yeah, I actually think that it's in Mother of God where I said I almost into the wilded myself. Like I went out there and really I got so lost and so destroyed that I said this is going to be the next one. This is going to be the next story of some idiot kid from New York who went to the Amazon thinking he was Percy Foss.
of Columbia is in part focused on what you call cool worlds, or worlds outside our solar system where temperature is sufficiently cool to allow for moons, rings, and life to form, and for us humans to observe it. So, can you tell me more about this idea, this place of cool worlds?
Yeah, the history of discovering planets outside our solar system was really dominated by these hot planets. And that's just because of the fact they're easier to find. When the very first methods came online, these were primarily the Doppler spectroscopy method, looking for wobbling stars, and also the transit method. And these two both have a really strong bias towards finding these hot planets. Now, hot planets are interesting. The chemistry in their atmosphere is fascinating. It's very alien. An example of one that's particularly close to my heart is Trace 2b, whose atmosphere is so dark, it's less reflective than coal. And so they have really bizarre photometric properties, yet at the same time, they resemble nothing like our own home. And so it said there's two types of astrophysicists: the astrophysicists who care about how the universe works. They want to understand the mechanics of the machinery of this universe. Why did the Big Bang happen? Why is the universe expanding? How are galaxies formed? And there's another type of astrophysicist which perhaps speaks to me a little bit more. It whispers into your ear, and that is, why are we here? Are we alone? Are there others out there? And ultimately, along this journey, the hot planets aren't going to get us there. When we're looking for life in the universe, it seems to make perfect sense that there should be planets like our own out there, maybe even moons like our own planet around gas giants that could be habitable. And so my research has been driven by trying to find these more terraqueous globes that might resemble our own planet.
So they're the ones that lurk more in the shadows in terms of how difficult it is to detect.
They're much harder. They're harder for several reasons. The method we primarily use is the transit method. So this is really eclipses. As the planet passes in front of the star, it blocks out some starlight. The problem with that is that not all planets pass in front of their star. They have to be aligned correctly from your line of sight. And so the further away the planet is from the star, the cooler it is, the less likely it is that you're going to get that geometric alignment. So whereas a hot Jupiter, about 1% of hot Jupiters will transit in front of their star, only about 0.5%, maybe even 0.25% of Earth-like planets will have the right geometry to transit. And so that makes it much, much harder for us.
What's the connection between temperature of the planet and geometric alignment, probability of geometric alignment?
There's not a direct connection, but they're connected via an intermediate parameter, which is their separation from the star. So the planet will be cooler if it's further away from the star, which in turn means that the probability of getting that alignment correct is going to be less. On top of that, they also transit their star less frequently. So if you go to the telescope and you wanted to discover a hot Jupiter, you could probably do it in a week or so, because the orbital periods of order of 1, 2, 3 days. So you can actually get the full orbit 2 or 3 times over. Whereas if you wanted to detect an Earth-like planet, you have to observe that star for 3, 4 years. And that's actually one of the problems with Kepler. Kepler was this very successful mission that NASA launched over a decade ago now, I think. And it discovered thousands of planets. It's still the dominant source of exoplanets that we know about. But unfortunately, it didn't last as long as we would have liked it to. It died after about 4.35 years, I think it was. And so for an Earth-like planet, that's just enough to catch 4 transits. And 4 transits was kind of seen as the minimum. But of course, the more transits you see, the easier it is to detect it, because you build up signal to noise. If you see the same thing tick, 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 the more ticks you get, the easier it is to find it. And so it was really a shame that Kepler was just at the limit of where we were expecting it to start to see Earth-like planets. And in fact, it really found zero planets that are around stars like the sun, that orbit similar to the Earth around the sun, and could potentially be similar to our own planet in terms of its composition. And so it's a great shame, but that's why it gives astronomers more to do in the future.
Just to clarify, the transit method is our primary way of detecting these things. And what it is when the object occludes the source of light just a tiny bit, a few pixels. And from that, we can infer something about its mass and size and distance and geometry, all of that. That's like trying to tell what at a party, you can't see anything about a person, but you can just see by the way they occlude others. So this is the method. But this is super far away. how many pixels of information do we have? Basically, how high resolution is the signal that we can get about these occlusions?
You're right in your description. I think just to build upon that a little bit more, it might be almost like your vision is completely blurry. Like you have an extreme, eye prescription, and so you can't resolve anything. Everything's just blurs. But you can tell that something was there because it just got fainter for a short amount of time. Someone passed in front of a light.
Yeah.
And so that light in your eyes would just dim for a short moment. Now, the reason we have that problem with blurriness or resolution is just because the stars are so far away. I mean, the closest stars are 4 light years away, but most of the stars Kepler looked at were thousands of light years away. And so there's absolutely no chance that the telescope can physically resolve the star, or even the separation between the planet and the star is too small, especially for a telescope like Kepler. It's only 1 meter across. In principle, you can make those detections, but you need a different kind of telescope. We call that direct imaging. And direct imaging is a very exciting, distinct way of detecting planets. But it, as you can imagine, is going to be far easier to detect planets which are really far away from their star to do that, because that's going to make that separation really big. And then you also want the star to be really close to us, so the nearest stars. Not only that, but you would prefer that planet to be really hot, because the hotter it is, the brighter it is. And so that tends to bias direct imaging towards planets which are in the process of forming. Mm-hmm. So things which have just formed, the planet's still got all of its primordial heat embedded within it, and it's glowing. We can see those quite easily. But for the planets more like the Earth, of course, they've cooled down, and so we can't see that. The light is pitiful compared to a newly formed planet. We would like to get there with direct imaging. That's the dream, is to have the pale blue dot, an actual photograph of it, maybe even just a 1 pixel photograph of it. But for now, the entire solar system is 1 pixel, certainly with the transit method, most other telescopes. And so all you can do is see where that 1 pixel, which contains potentially dozens of planets and the star, maybe even multiple stars, dims for a short amount of time.